I begin by putting a small conical flask onto the top loading balance. First, I need to weigh out 2.38 grams of sodium tetraborate decahydrate, which is also called borax in short. I try to get as close as possible to the amount required and decide that 2.40 grams is close enough. The next reagent is sodium hydroxide. I need to weigh out 0.50 grams, but sodium hydroxide comes in chunky pellets, so I just put in 2 or 3 pellets and get to the required amount as close as possible, which is in my case 0.58 grams. To prepare an aqueous solution of the reactants, I need to add 10 milliliters of distilled water to the borax and the sodium hydroxide. This can be measured out in a graduated cylinder. It doesn't have to be particularly precise measurement of the volume. Gently swirling, the reagent won't dissolve easily, so I need to hold the flask under running hot water, which will help the reagents to dissolve and result in a clear, colorless solution. Once the reagents are dissolved, I need to set up my reaction. So I put the flea or stir bar into my flask, and then I clamp the flask into an ice bath on top of a magnetic stirrer. I switch on the motor, but as this is a stirrer as well as a hot plate, I need to be careful what I switch on, so I have to make sure I only turn on the stirring motor and not the heater. I turn this onto gentle stirring mode, and I might need to adjust the position so that the flask sits very central over the top of the plate and over the top of the motor. To prepare the second reagent solution, I need to measure out 7.5 milliliters of distilled water into a small beaker. So I use a micropipette to measure out the volume. Change the tip for the next reagent, which is 30% hydrogen peroxide solution. I adjust the volume on the micropipette to 2.9 milliliters. And measure out this reagent added to the 7.5 milliliters of water. In the meantime, my original mixture of borax and sodium hydroxide has been sitting and stirring in the ice bath and has turned into metaborate, which is now a very cold solution. I add the hydrogen peroxide solution slowly to this mixture, ideally just a few drops at a time. So this process will take 2 or 3 minutes, by which time my crystals will start forming. Once a thick white precipitate is formed in my flask, which usually only takes a few minutes, I can set up my vacuum filtration. I start with clamping my vacuum flask securely, add the vacuum hose, attach it to the nozzle on the vacuum flask and the other end to the vacuum outlet. I put a Buchner funnel on top of the vacuum flask and add filter paper. I turn on the vacuum and wet the filter paper with a small amount of distilled water. I shake my solution to turn it into a slurry and then pour this into my Buchner funnel while the vacuum is running. To wash the product, I remove the vacuum hose from the flask, and next I remove the stir bar from the funnel, and then I add about 5 milliliters of ethanol into the Buchner funnel. I try to distribute it over all the product, mix it up with a spatula and reapply the vacuum. Washing with ethanol removes soluble impurities and also helps dry my product. I flatten this out so that it can dry evenly, and now have to wait until it's completely dry, which can take 30 minutes or longer. The result is white powder.